Hello and welcome to a new Google Sheets video in Practical Sheets. Today we're going to take a look at drop-down lists. Actually, we're going to mix two of my videos, my past videos, the dependent drop-down video and the multi-dependent or the multi-selection drop-down video. So I'll show you what we're going to do today. We're going to have a category here that we're going to set up as a basic drop-down. And once we select a category, that I have them here mapped out, each category with some subcategories. Once we have it selected automatically via a code we done with Google Apps Script, we're going to have the interests that relate to this category. Until now, nothing new. We've done this in several other videos. The nice thing about this is that I can select multiple options. For example, I'm going to select that in entertainment, I like to play video games, but I also like watching movies, and I also like listening to music. So I have the three of them, and if I put video games again, it won't repeat itself, and if I delete it, it will just delete it. And if I delete this one, it will also delete the option I have here and the dropdown. So it's a mix between dependent dropdowns and multiple selection. I hope you like it. And before we begin, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, or if you want to download these and more than 100 templates of the videos of the channel, you can go to the Patreon page where you can also ask me specific things about each of the templates. And special thanks to all of my patrons, because without them, this couldn't keep on going. Thank you so much. So let's begin. We're going to begin with two columns, one category and one subcategory. In this case, I brought hobbies and I categorize these hobbies in different types. So what I want to do is to mix a couple of videos I've done in the past. The first video will be a dependent dropdown. That is, that I'm going to choose a category, and depending on that category, we're going to create different interests. And then the nice thing, or the mix that I'm doing in this video, is that once I try to select my hobby, or my, well, here I put it like interests, so we'll call it here interest, I may select one or two or three of the options. I've already done this in a couple of videos, so we're going to mix both. So all of these videos are a way of testing the limits of Google Apps Script and what can we do with it. So let's begin with the first part. First, we're going to do just a basic, normal dropdown with this category. So I'll stand here and choose your category. Let's give a bit of zoom. We'll go to my magnifying glass and I'll start writing dropdown. I'll insert the dropdown. I want this to apply for all my column. So I will write a column and then A, so that it goes up until the last row. In criteria, I'm going to select dropdown from a range. And then in this range, I'm going to select the range selector and then stand on this field, go to data, and then select all of these column from A2 up to the row, the last row. Okay. So I'm going back to dropdown, and here I can see that I have my categories. So first step, very, very easy. The next step could be done in one of two ways, with code or with an auxiliary sheet. I'm going to do it with code. I have separate videos where I do it with just with formulas, but I'm going to do it with code because I think it's a bit more robust. And for example, if you add new rows or delete, it will always work well. So even though it's easier to do it the other way, I prefer to do it with code. I think it stands the test of time a bit more. And given that we also need to do the multiple selection part in the code, so we know that we're going to have to code, so why don't we do it in just one code? So I'm going to click extensions and then AppScript. So I need two functions. The first function will be, this will be called dependent dropdown. So the first thing I need to know is in which cell am I? How can I do it? There are many ways of doing it. We're going to use this event because we're going to need it in my other function. the range will be e.range, and I need to know in which column is the range. So I'll hit dot and then get column. And I want this column to be column 1. So we're going to insert this inside conditional and if, and I'm going to say, okay, the column, I need this to be column number 1. I need a dependent dropdown to execute just when the column 1 is activated, when the user is in the column 1 and the row is not 1 but 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or more than 1. So I'm going to add a new condition that is e.range.getRow, and I want the row to be more than 1. Okay, finally, I want my sheet to be called dropdowns. I don't want this to work on data or any other of my sheets. So I'm going to add a new one that it will be e.range.getSheet.getName. Again, I'm going pretty fast here because there are other videos where I go into detail and more slow. And the name will be, our case, dropdowns. The ones of you that know a bit of programming may start seeing some efficiencies to be made. For example, this e-range, we could store in a variable, so this is not so long, but we can deal with that later. So if these 3 things apply, maybe we could have another condition, and is that the value has to be different than empty. So I'm going to use another if. This is called a nested if. So in my nested if, I'm going to e.value, and I'm going to say that the value should be different than empty, or if value exists. And then if there is a value, then we are going to do my dropdown. How do we do the dropdown? The first thing is to go to data and grab this table. How do we do it? We could do e.source, that is the whole sheet or spreadsheet, e.source dot get sheet by name, and the name is data, and then I'm going to get all the table that I find. I'm going to store this in a variable called data. Then I'm going to get the values, and finally I'm going to filter the values. For each row, I just wanted to bring the rows where the first element equals to the category that was chosen. So the first row in position 0 equals to e.value. And finally, I don't need the whole table, I just need this column. So I'm going to map it. Map and filter are both methods that can be applied to arrays. So I'm going to map it so that for each row, I just want to bring the element 1. So we filter by element 0 and we just isolate the element 1, that is the interest. And now all of this is my list of options. So we're going to create a variable called options list. Now I'm going to create the data validation. I'm going to go to spreadsheet, app dot new data validation dot, we'll choose the type of data validation. We want this required value in list. Finally, we need to give wishes to give it the list, and the list is this one, options list. And then we're going to build it with this build method. I'm going to go a couple of zoom outs to show you that this is just 2 rows. Long rows, but just two lines of code. Okay? I'm going to store all of these in a variable called validation or validation rule. And the last thing I need to do is to add this validation rule to the cell to the right of the cell where the user is at. So we do this by e.range.offset. we're going to move these 0 rows and 1 column to the right. And in that cell, we are going to set the data validation to my validation. Let's see if this works. I've never done it so fast. So it's an express way. Let's save. And for this to work, I need to put it inside an onEdit function. So I'm going to create another function called onEdit. And inside of it, I'm going to call my dependent dropdown. Very important to always have the E, not only on the dependent dropdown, but also on the onEdit, because the onEdit is the one that brings this E object or E event and catches it. Okay, let's save it again and let's try it. Something did not work, so I would suspect because let me see. Maybe it's this E value, so I'm just going to remove this and say only if E value exists. Here, get row should have parentheses. Let's save. And now we have it. Okay, now we have all of the creative, and if I go to outdoor, we have all of the activities that are outdoor, and if I do social, then I have all of the activities that are social. Maybe a thing that looks weird is that this dropdown has this ship and this dropdown doesn't. So just to keep it all in the same design, I'm going to go to data validation, and select this one, and in advanced options I will change the display style to arrow and click done. Okay, so that it looks a bit more classic, because right now in Google Apps Script there is no way of adding the ship. So I have my first part running. What I think I could do is that if I delete this, maybe I should delete the value and the validation of the cell to the right. This is very easy to do. I'm just going, remember that this was if the value was something. If not, I could do an else. If not, I could do something very similar to this eRange.offset dot, and we're going to clear the content first, and then we're going to clear the data validations. Some of you that have more experience with Google Apps Script have noticed that and maybe asking themselves why when I hit the dot I don't see the autocomplete functionality. This is one of the reasons why I don't like that much working with this E, because it leaves Google Apps Script a bit helpless. So you need to have a lot of experience, or just have your reference at hand, your documentation of Google Apps Script, so you know that you are not messing up. Remember that one uppercase or lowercase that is not in place, it will send an error to the code. Okay, so let's save again and let's try it. If I delete here, then it deletes the data validation and any data I have. For example, let's try both. So I'll put creative, and here it goes my dropdown. My dropdown appears, then I select knitting, and then if I delete, it should delete also this one and the data validation. So this looks nice. Just going to clean everything up, and also this. Perfect. And now what I want is that when I select, for example, performing arts, I could select singing, and then I could select dancing, and we have in the same, both in the same. So we're going to move this a bit. We're going to remember that we did this nested if. So what I can do is I'm going to play a bit more with this nested if, so I don't have to do a new function. Now I have two cases. The first case is the one I already did just for this column, and the second one will be for this second column. So in both cases, I'm going to need the row will be more than one, and the sheet should be dropdowns. So what I'm going to do is to create another if just with these two conditions: eRange get row greater than one, and range get sheet get name equal to dropdowns. Let's cut it and paste it here. We're going to open our brackets, and we're going to all of these paste it inside our bracket. And we could do right click and format the document so it looks a bit more ordered and structured. Okay, I could remove this double ampersand. And now what I could do is do an else if very similar to this one, but with column 2. So I'm going to do else if eRange.getColumn equals 2, then the things will be a bit different. So I already have my dropdown, so I don't have to create the dropdown again. I'm going to do a thing a bit different. And if you already saw the video on multiple selection, you know more or less how I'm going to do it. So we're going to give also some conditions. The first condition is that if there was nothing before, if for example, I have here nothing, and then I put dancing, then you just leave dancing as it is, okay? So here we're going to introduce a new element. We have already talked about dot value. We're going to introduce a new element inside my e object, and this element is called old value. It is the value that was in place before I edited. So we're going to say that if the old value didn't exist, the e dot old value didn't exist, if it was empty, then e dot range dot set value will be our value. It's like a bit redundant, but it will help. It will prove useful when I start adding the other conditions. So let's test it out. This means that if this is empty and then I put singing, then it will leave singing. This is condition number 1. The other option is that there was something before. So else, if old value, there was something, then there are a couple of things we could do. The first thing I want to do is that if I add dancing, then I want to add dancing to my singing, okay? So we're going to say e.range.setValue. It will be the old value plus, I'm going to put a comma and a space, and then we're going to add with another plus the value. Let's save and let's try it out. So again, I'm going to delete it. Nothing happens. Then I'm going to put play musical instruments. Nothing happens. It just remains. And if I add dancing, let's change this instead of null. Let's put this with equals to empty to see if it works here. If it's, sorry, yeah, if it equals to empty. Let's save and let's try it again. So we'll put singing and then we'll put dancing. Finally, one of the things, again, I don't like this E that much because it doesn't help a lot. So you need to double check your code multiple times. So I'm going, for example, I forgot to put the E here, e.oldValue, and here the e.value. Maybe I should have set variables from the beginning, so I didn't need to do this, but we've already done it like this. Let's save it and let's try. So I'm going to put creative so that this keeps working. Perfect. Now I'm going to put writing. I'm going to delete writing to see that it also works. I'm going to select writing and then I'm going to select painting. And you can see that I have writing, painting, and then drawing. Perfect. But what happens if I delete it? So it says writing, painting, drawing, undefined. Okay, so I need another condition. And the condition will be, here I'm going to put another condition, an else if. Or actually, I could put it here. I am going to put a condition that if the value, e.value, exists, then I'll leave this as it is. But if it does not exist, that is, if I delete this, then we'll do e.range.setValue or just clear content and that's it. So I remove this undefined thing that I had before. Okay, let's save and let's try it again. So I'm going to delete and it works perfectly. And if I do writing and then painting and then drawing, there's another thing that is that if I put writing again, then it will duplicate it. So I could do a very simple thing just to avoid the duplicates. So before I write it down, I'm going to look in the old value and see if the old value, if the new value is already in the value. That is, if writing is already in my interest. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to do e.oldValue.indexOf. and we're going to look for e.value. Only if it does not find it, that is, if the index of return -1, that means that it has not found it, then we will do this. If it is not repeated, then it will put it. If it is repeated, then it won't do anything. Let's save it and let's try it out. Delete it again. I'll do writing, and then drawing, and then photography, and then drawing again. So I needed an other else. So this is like a festival of a lesson in conditionals. So we'll do that. If it happens, we'll just put the old value as it was, and that's it. Range dot set value. Just leave the old value. That's it. Let's save it and try it one last time. So I'm going to delete it. Painting, writing, and painting again. And it will leave the other. Okay? So as I told you in the multiple selection video, the only thing I don't like about this is that it leaves this small red arrow that says there was some mistake. Actually, there's no mistake. It's working as I wanted it to work, but it will still, you still see this red arrow. So for some of you, it may be annoying. Okay, that's it. So I hope you liked it. It's just, again, a crossover of two of my most watched videos. So I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope that it works for some of you. Actually, I did this video because of one of your comments in Patreon page or in YouTube where you wanted to do something similar. So thanks again, my patrons, because without them, I couldn't be doing this channel. I couldn't keep this channel going. Thank you so much. And the rest of you, thanks also. And if you want just to leave a like or a comment or subscribe to the channel, you will help me a lot. Thank you so much. See you next time.